I'll request all of you to put your mics on mute and then just follow this order as well. If somebody else is speaking, keep your mics on mute because that'll cause a lot of interference. All right, so welcome to our MBA Executive Election Q&A session. We are scheduling this session with an intent to provide candidates an opportunity to talk about their election campaign and why they think that they deserve to be elected as the incoming executive team. Just a couple of reminders in terms of the code of conduct for this session. We will be recording this session and it will be made available to the student body before they cast their votes. I would request all candidates to make themselves visible on the screen, which I think everybody is already doing. This would help the student body to identify the candidates as and when they speak. Also, we will first invite questions from the current MBA executive team. We have amongst us the current president, Shweta, VP Finance, Anish, VP Engagement, Madhav, and VP Experiential Learning, Sylvia. Followed by that, we will open the floor up for questions from the general student body. Also, I request students to type in their questions along with the name of the candidate they would like to address the question to in the chat window. We are also joined by our student engagement advisor from the master's office, Jenna, to help address questions that students may have with respect to the master's office involvement with the operations of the MBAA. I would also request candidates to be cognizant of the time they take for each response and ensure they do not interrupt the other candidate when they speak. Ideally, I would recommend try to limit your responses to within 1 minute because we're targeting that we can end this session by 6:30 p.m. So with that, I'll hand it over to Shweta for the first question.
Okay, so my first question would be to Sharon. Hello. We're not able to hear you. Oh, okay. Let me ask the question and then you can talk. Yeah, right. So you worked as the first-year rep of governance. So you should be aware of the numerous responsibilities that fall under the president portfolio. So if elected, what would be your first action item on your agenda and why?
The first thing that I would like to do will be building a collaborative team. Considering my personalities and leadership style, I welcome positive criticisms and like to gain the best understanding of each one of the team members. So hopefully I can create a team environment where feedbacks and understanding come first. So also over the last 7 months, working closely with the president and the other MBAA members, I did discover that having all team members on the same page is the most important to succeed. Without collaborations, I sometimes feel like it's just a team. It's just a collection of individuals who speak their own voices without listening to others to understand. So if I get elected for the president of MBAA with some faces, with some fresh faces joining, I would like to have a face-to-face meeting to first establish a great rapport as a team with VPs, and second, to learn about what their plans are as VPs. I'll also make sure to share mine as well. And lastly, but not the least, to understand weaknesses and strengths of my team so that we can improve weaknesses and amplify the strengths to deliver what MBA students deserve.
Shweta, does that answer your question or do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. Next, I have a question for Giorgio. So, Giorgio, how have you utilized the past 1 year to prepare yourself for the role and better your understanding of the MBA Association?
Okay, so I remember I lost the election when it was October or November when it came to the first-year rep for the governance. And so I have not been in the committee this while, but I have been doing my homework. This has been like a homework period for me. So one thing that I have focused on is being in touch with you and Anish. So I've got a lot of information and knowledge about what is happening currently in the MBA Association, what are the changes that are happening, what are the new events being planned, like just to know, to let everyone know that I know what is going to follow the MBA elections. There is going to be, like, for a president, it's going to be the first most important thing would be meeting all the heads of the individual clubs. There is going to be an introduction to the Business Alumni Association. There is going to be the budget and the calendar that is being planned. Then when it comes, there is going to be re-registration of the student groups, where I would have to work with the operations VP. There would be leadership trainings being provided to all the new members. The Lister Hall is going to happen in fall, followed by BAM for Jasper or whatever, just to let you know that I know what I'm talking about. And I've also been in touch with alumni. I've been in touch with individual VPs of the MBAA. I've been an active participant when it comes to a lot of MBA events. Like I am a regular at bar nights. Chinese, I've participated in the Chinese New Year year-end party and the Halloween night. I'm also a member of the volleyball and the football teams. We've also put an MBA team for the badminton tournament that had happened. I was involved in the case competition, the winter case competition. So yes, I've been pretty involved. I've got a lot of knowledge from you guys as well. So I think that is going to help me take up this role successfully.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Moving on, my next question would be to Kevin James. So Kevin, you've participated in the MBA games, internal case competitions, and the various social events, and you also worked in the MBA as a first-year rep. So, what are your key learnings that you've gathered from the entire experience, and how would you put that to use if elected as the next president?
Hey there. Yeah. First of all, just sorry that I can't get my camera to work right now. I was working for my afternoon meetings. But to answer your question, I guess this past year has been good for me because I've been on both sides of the table as a student participating in the events and on the organization side. So I know the amount of work that goes into it, and I also know that it's important to have a diversity of events because, like you mentioned, I've been to the cultural events, the celebration party, bar nights. The student body is going to need obviously career development and networking events, case comps, and then also the athletic events as well, stuff that can bring the whole community together. I also know that if you're going to be in a governance position, it's important to get the feedback of the student body. So, I'd want to be someone who's always physically approachable at all the events, so that people don't have to reach out by email and stuff. It's important to actually attend all the events that the MBA puts on. And finally, I guess the one thing that I've learned from being on the exec team this year as well is there's going to be a lot of work setting the social calendar and planning all the events that's going to have to get done over the summer. And that's going to take things like, for example, the Bears Den event planner training, which I know there's no more available over the spring and summer until the fall, but that's something that I went and got at the last session in March that was available. So that'd be prepared if elected into the role to plan all the events for the year.
Great, thank you. Finally, my last question would be, I guess, to Paramita. So over the past 1 year, we've seen that the three of your competitors, the other three nominees, they played a more active role in several MBA activities and events. So their personal experience in organizing and participating in these events, that's increased their understanding of the MBA operations. So having said that, in your case, how do you plan to address this gap and avoid wasting time trying to make up for that loss?
So, hi everybody, and to answer your question directly, I have been associated with the MBAA in different aspects, because the MBAA is not only about the different events that is held for the bar nights or the MBA gala. No, not like the gala didn't happen this year, unfortunately, not the bar night or like the Christmas New Year and others, the Chinese New Year and the other stuff. But it's also to do with a lot of other stuff, because I was directly associated with the Net Impact. I have been directly associated with the MBA Women's Network and have gone to almost all the events that they have organized. I have also been to bar nights, and I have been to other events which have been held by the MBAA. Besides that, I have also talked with my cohort, and not just by my cohort, but I've also talked with people like people who are in the part-time program. And I have also talked with people from the current executive and have got an idea about what the entire MBA experience is all about, what the executive is. And my experience of having been in executives and not just as a student member, but also with leading significant executive committees over the past 10 years and more, has made me aware of the different things which need to be done. So I'm not somebody who's new to executive roles. I've done these over like several years, and because I am also aware of the different things which happen at the UFA, having been in executive committees at the UFA before. I think it would be easy for me with, I shouldn't say easy, but it would be uh, doable for me with the time commitments and everything which is required, and with my previous experiences and the current experience I have of the MBA, to make sure that I don't lose much time, as you mentioned right now, Shweta, in getting myself up, because I have been keeping myself abreast of what is happening around there. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm done, Ali.
Okay, thank you, Shweta. Now we will move on to VP Finance, and you can start asking your questions now.
Thank you, Ali. So my first question would be for Shivani. So compared to the other nominees for the finance position, you've gained a lot of hands-on experience working as the first-year rep of finance. So based on your experience, what would be one aspect of the role that requires improvement, and how would you go about implementing that change?
Okay. So by being in the position, like as you said, by being in the position and doing the hands-on, have gaining an hands-on experience, I would say like one thing is like recording and validating all the expenses that comes the way of the VP finance or the first year finance is the thing that needs improvement, because currently the process is a very tedious process. It's like done on the Excel and the emails. So basically, I will explain a little about the process first. So basically, the VP finance receives an email with the reimbursement form with all the details of the uh, event and the expenses, and they also receive the scanned copies of the bills. They validate them and then check that you have enough resources available that you can reimburse that claim, or that there is no alcohol that is served during the events. There are a couple of check items, and once that is done, it is forwarded to the MBA office, who finally validates and reimburses the claim. So this is not it. The MBA finance executives later have to add all of this into the budget sheet. So it is done basically manually, that you enter each and every claim in that budget sheet. So it takes a lot of time, and there is a issue that errors can take place while entering the values. So when I was thinking that basically if we can use a software for the management of finances, there are a couple of softwares that a lot of businesses or small businesses use, be it like I would say there is one offered by Oracle, because I've used that before, Udo or something like that, in which basically it gives a facility that you can easily do your budget planning, and you can easily enter all the bills, do the analysis. It is equipped with the analytical tools. You can make the graphs, you can see how much budget is consumed and how much budget is left. So I think that will make the analysis easier and convenient. So yeah.
Just a quick note here, guys. Please try to restrict your responses to within a minute. A couple of you have gone quite a bit over time, so please be respectful for about the time for other candidates as well. Thank you. You should have a follow-up.
No, thanks, Shivani.
Okay.
So my next question is going to be to Sandeep, and it's actually the same question that was asked to Giorgio. That how, Sandeep, how have you utilized the past 1 year to prepare yourself for the role better and better your understanding of what the responsibilities for VP Finance are?
Thank you for the question, Anish. Even last year, I actually interacted with you and Shweta about what the role requires. This is something that I've kept this year as well. I've interacted with you. I've interacted with Shivani. I knew everything about the email reimbursement and data entry. And I actually interacted with what the what are the duties and what are the responsibility, what are the requirements. So I kept myself pretty updated with that, and I'm sure I can use it when I get into the role.
All right, and I had a follow-up question for you as well. So, looking at your video, you were talking about increasing the transparency about the budget allocation stuff. So, we do have that option in where we at the AGM we do share a budget report with everybody, and we currently the MBA Association has an open door policy. So, what are the improvement areas, and how do you think that you are going to increase that?
About the transparency thing, actually, I interacted with a lot of part-time students and full-time students, and this is one thing that came quite frequently. I'm sure, I'm sure, and I know that MBA Association has the resources where people can go and access, but nobody actually, I feel that nobody is actually aware of the resources that are available. There's another question that I got from part-time students, that whether they were not even informed whether second-year students can vote or not. So there is a sort of I feel that miscommunication or the gap between part-time students and full-time students that I want to fill. This is also a part of my agenda. So transparency, yeah, I want to bring transparency, but I also want to communicate it to part-time and full-time students so that they can get access and they know that there is an access to the resources.
And finally, a last follow-up question for that. Don't you think that the transparency and communication area is the responsibility of VP Operations and not VP Finance?
I feel that, of course, that is. But if I get into finance, I can actually work with VP Operations and VP and all other VPs. And if we can work together, I mean, if I have some improvement ideas, I can basically pitch to the VP Operations. Doesn't matter. I don't want to restrict just to my role. Of course, I want to get 100% to my role. But if I have any ideas that I can pitch to VP Operation or VP Engagement, of course, I'm gonna put it across. If I hear from other students, I want to be their voice and I want to put the point across.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So my next question is for Shannon. So Shannon, I watched your speech again, and you stated that about 50% of the MBA Association budget was allocated towards case competitions. So as the current VP of Finance, I know for a fact that that is not true. The actual number is close to 25% and not 50%. So can you please explain me a little better, where did you get these numbers from? Shannon, are you there on the call?
Sorry, I totally forgot to unmute my microphone. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sorry. So that information was just told to me by one of the current government people, but it was kind of secondhand. So I definitely would have liked to have seen the budget, so I could have confirmed that before doing my speech.
But I believe the budget allocations were shared with you before you put in your speech.
The breakdown that you sent me didn't have specific allotments to case comps or clubs or anything like that.
But it did have information about the experiential learning portfolio, and since we all know the case comps fall under experiential learning portfolio, so I thought that was, and again, you were given an option to ask for further clarifications if you had any as well. So my basic point is that instead of inferring things and putting it out in front of the student cohort, we should check the facts first and before we put some statements out.
For sure, thank you. Is there a question there?
No, I just wanted to clarify the fact so that there's no misinformation among the student body. And the second question that I have for you was, again, in your video, you said that if elected, your first order of business would be to allocate more money into internal training rather than external case competitions. Again, shouldn't this be a decision taken in collaboration with the future VP Experiential Learning and the Master's Program Office? Because as of now, it appears to me that your understanding is that the VP Finance has the sole authority on the budget.
Yeah, for sure. It's a collaborative effort and decision where funds should be allocated, for sure.
All right. All right. Thank you for your comments on that. So So my next question would be for Jenkins. So Jenkins, again, in your video, I saw that collaboration was a theme that you were trying to bring out, that you would work collaboratively with the entire executive board and the clubs as well. So I have a scenario for you. So consider that there's $8,000 left to allocate between two different clubs, and both the clubs have made an initial request for $5,000 each. So how would you bring in your collaborative efforts to allocate the fund between those two clubs so that they're not unhappy with how things are going?
That's a really good question, Anish. Thank you for such a challenging question. I think if something like that were to occur, and I think something like that may occur given the circumstances of where the budget is going and the cuts in the university, if something like that were to occur, I think we'd be looking at having these two different clubs present their cases to the VPs, and we would have to make a decision on where the budget goes in terms of how we can work together to potentially do cutbacks and where we can make those cutbacks, because what we want to do is provide the most value towards our students. I would, as I'm not currently a part of the MBAA, I would want to see what kind of metrics, what kind of measurements, what kind of things are tracked between these different events and clubs to see the effectiveness of these different events, and then we can have a better idea of how to make that decision. I don't think it's a decision that I'll be making on my own, but like I said, collaborative effort. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thanks, Jenkins. And finally, my last question is for Sumita. So Sumita, once again, in your video, you talked about corporate partnerships. I really like the idea of bringing corporate partnerships that would benefit the student body. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how would you go about doing this?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the question, Anish. I previously have held the role of VP External for a student group at the University of Alberta. I know that right now it's very challenging economic times, and it was the same context back when I was working with them, and we raised close to $100,000 for our organization. So I'd like to implement some very similar strategies that would be tiered sponsorship packages. So we could have companies sponsoring, say, bar nights, case competitions, or other opportunities that I would work with our VP Experiential Learning and the social committee to see what the students would like and what would be valuable for them. But I would try to come with a tiered sponsorship approach and reach out to corporates to not only get extra funding so we could have additional revenue streams and provide more events for students, but also be able to have more opportunities to network and have connections with corporates. Does that answer your question?
Perfect. Thanks, Sumita. So those are all the questions that I have. Thanks, Ali, for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, Anish. Now we'll move on to Madhav. Madhav, you have questions for the candidates? Please go ahead.
Yes, Ali, thank you so much. My first question is directed towards Kevin. So Kevin, you talked about the possibility of hosting a regional case competition with other universities in Alberta, like a Western Conference kind of a thing. So now our roles are short-term engagements. We're in these roles for about 8 months. And sometimes these projects tend to take a little longer because so many other parties are involved. So I just had a question about how you would propose to have like a follow-up on these things. Like, how would you see that if this engagement exceeded your term, how would you essentially make sure that it's completed in the next VP's term?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Madhav. That's a good one. So the way I see it, there's kind of a gap right now in the calendar. For example, there was a Haskane, which is U of Calgary case competition, which is normally held every year, and that's no longer being held. So a kind of gap has opened up for a case comp that's hosted in U Alberta. And I thought that would be a good thing that we could, partner with some local firms, bring in some money to do that. You mentioned the time constraints. This is something that I've already kind of bounced some ideas around with people, within the team and the MBA office. So if we got started on it like now at the beginning of the summer, and we scheduled it for, say, the end of like fall term, that would give us, kind of that 7 to 8 months to make sure it all gets done. And I also kind of see it in the same way of, by only making it Western regional and maybe inviting, say, like USask, Manitoba, Calgary, Alberta kind of thing. Size-wise, like we had 11 different teams in the fall internal in the past year. And I don't see a problem if we kept it sort of a similar size with maybe like 10 to a dozen teams. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. But one of the things that I asked you was if it does exceed your term, do you have any plans about how you're gonna maybe coach somebody to pick it up after you or something like that? Have you thought about that, or are you making sure that it's gonna get done in say by the time you're done?
I have full confidence that it's something that we could get done within my term. Obviously, if there were unforeseen circumstances, say with like COVID-19, if that affects the plans or something like that, I would hope to have laid the groundwork so that whatever first-year representatives come in to join the team next year would be able to take that on for their executive term.
All right, thank you. That answers my question. The next one I have is for Giorgio. So Giorgio, in your speech, you talked about improving the experience for the different events that we have in the MBA, that the MBA Association hosts and all the other student bodies host. Have you thought about anything that you plan to improve, and could you tell us about how you plan on doing it?
Okay, sorry, my mic was off. There are a few things that I've actually thought about. So when it comes to improving overall experience, when it comes to letting people know, giving them more information about things such as academic help that is provided by the universities, such as academic success centers, which have workshops and appointments that you can go for help. We have the Office of the Student Ombuds that help probably international students with disciplinary issues such as plagiarism. Like a lot of international students won't know about things like these. So this is something that I want the cohort to know better. And another thing is I want to have more networking between alumni and current MBA students. So probably organize more face-to-face meetings. We can have alumni from different industries to come and give talks, and send an invite to everyone. And people who are interested in that specific industries can attend it and gain knowledge. And before even looking at the alumni, one thing I want to focus on is internal cohort experience, where I mean, I'm sure you've been VP engagement, so you've seen well, the same people come for most of the events, and I want more involvement, part-time first year and second year. They can come and talk about different industries and stuff, so that's how we can improve the experience as a cohort.
Thank you, Giorgio.
Yeah.
Yeah, that answers my question.
Okay.
Moving on, Shannon, I have a question for you. So my question is, in your speech, you talked about improving the selection process for the different clubs, committees, and events. So could you tell me about how you plan to increase access, make it more inclusive, and make it less intimidating for students without dropping the quality of the experience for all the stakeholders in these situations?
That's a really good question. I guess I would just like to see more like low stakes opportunities. So there still exist the sort of competitive opportunities, but also kind of hopefully plan more stuff that's like internal and for learning and training, just like for practicing. So I'm not really sure like what that would entail. Like obviously being finance, like I wouldn't even be the one organizing this, but it would definitely be like an idea, because I feel like a lot of the feedback I get from my classmates is they're like bummed out that they tried out for some of these teams and they're not getting the opportunity to even learn just because they're not already the cream of the crop or whatever. So yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. That answers my question. Okay, so my next question is directed towards Nikhil. So, Nikhil, you talked about organizing a lot of different kinds of events and that you plan to organize them in such a way that you can improve engagement, include a lot of the part-timers and the full-timers. And that's a great way of thinking for the engagement portfolio. But could you walk me through how you would take this project on? Just like really short, like, keep your answer under a minute, but how do you walk through, how do you take this project on, and how long do you think it would take to implement, and how you would deal with the impacts of such a thing on the budget?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and I want to talk about it in more detail. I couldn't in my video, but yeah, so I talked to a lot of students in my batch, and they were like, some of them, so like mostly part-time students, I talked to them, and they were like, the timing does not actually suit them for like bar nights and stuff. So I wanted to move it towards a more strategic time. Like I remember in 1 or 2 of the bar nights, their classes clashed, and there were a lot of part-time students coming in. So I wanted to make the bar nights a little more flexible, so have it like, like not having fixed Thursdays, so like having it on flexible days so that more people can join in. As for the other things, I already started talking to my cohort and people, and like people in the current team and people who are contesting for the next position as to how they want to do it. So basically, have a timing which we can never always cater to everyone, but we want to cater to most people. So having like timings, a very strategic timing set. And as for the budget, I think like I don't think it has a very big impact on the budget, because like I have very good connections around the city, so like I find very good deals and stuff. And like this year also I try to save a lot of money on engagement, so I plan to use the money which we've saved this year, so to like allocate them towards the newer activities. I hope that answers your question though.
Yes, that does. Thank you, Nikhil. Ali, do I have the time for another question, or should we move on?
I think we should move on to Sylvia.
Okay, all right.
Okay. So yeah, thank you, Madhav. Now, Sylvia, if you have some questions.
Yeah, thank you. So my first question is for all the president candidates. So very briefly, could you please explain, given the implications of a reduced provincial budget, outline how you plan to execute your platform with less resources available? And I guess we'll just go according to alphabetical order.
Hi, Sylvia. Thank you for the question. I think I will be starting first. So yes, I understand that there's going to be a very reduced budget because of the COVID-19 and also the previous cuts which had happened. So with this reduced budget, what I was actually thinking about of doing in order to increase more amount of people who are connected and doing stuff is, rather than putting the budget into any one particular portfolio, actually to sending out regular emails like surveys to people, finding out what are the different areas which are getting more engagement, and trying to utilize the budget in different areas accordingly. Also, I was thinking about working collaboratively with my team and trying to reach out to corporates and to my network who I have, and also to do fundraising, because with the volunteering opportunities that we have with Net Impact, there is a potential for doing fundraising. I have led similar fundraising drives in my past, with which we can get more money, with which we can probably fund more and more of the events. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
We mentioned alphabetical order, so let's stick to that. Kevin, do you want to go?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it started with Chaudhary Basu, so I started with I'm sorry.
I guess would that make Giorgio next then?
Kevin, you can go ahead if you want.
Go for it, man.
Okay. Okay. So the thing is, if there is less budget, something that I want to focus on is having more interaction within within our cohort and the MBA program itself, which means when it comes more internal case competitions, probably if there is less budgets, have less external case competitions. I mean, there are some big external case competitions that we can definitely have, but use less resources, less money to have more internal case competitions, have the winners from previous years come and present their cases so that more of us get to know about how a case competition is done, and without spending too much money, have make the experience better by involving more of our MBA students from part-time and second year. So I guess that will make the involvement much better without spending too much money on external stuff.
Okay, sounds good. I think we'll move on to Kevin next.
Yeah, so I understand obviously things are going to be tricky with the provincial budget and stuff next year, but I guess having been lucky to be on the executive team, I know kind of in our discussions with Associate Dean Mike that we're actually expecting to get about the same amount of money that we had this year for next year. So I don't foresee too many issues there. But as I kind of mentioned in my platform, my speech video, I am also looking to hopefully work with my other executives, especially whoever incoming VP Finance is, to leverage corporate partnerships and bring in extra money to fund activities that way. And additionally, I know, as Nikhil mentioned, he's done a great job in getting extra deals in the bar nights and stuff this year, which could allow us to hold, again, potentially more events for the same amount of money.
Okay, sounds good. And we'll move on to Sharon.
Yes. So a budget has always been something that I was kind of interested in, because it kind of gives us an opportunity or some room to play around when it comes to number of activities or events that we want to do. So I talked a lot about it with Swetha as well. We kind of expect the budget to be similar to the one last year, and hopefully that goes that there shouldn't be much cut that needs to be done on each portfolio. But I like the idea of bringing corporate money to fund activities and events as well. But for now, my plan remains to go over with the VPs once the election's over, to see where we need to minimize spendings and see where should be remained the same as well before we implement or come up with other plans to bring in more funds as needed.
Okay, here. So my next question is for Jacqueline and Veronica. So being a VP requires leading a committee to help execute your initiatives, and it can be challenging sometimes to motivate others during stressful times, such as midterms. How do you plan to retain the motivation of your committee to ensure that nothing falls off the plate? And I guess we'll go alphabetical order as well. So Jacqueline. Jacqueline, are you there?
She was having a hard time with connection earlier. I don't know if she's having the same issue right now.
Oh, okay. How about we'll move on with Veronica, and then if Jacqueline comes back on, we can get her to answer the question then.
She is part of the call. I can see her in the list of people online.
Oh,
she is.
Okay. Oh, she says her mic won't turn on. How about while she's figuring that out, we'll let Veronica take a stab at the question.
So good question. Yeah, so motivating people, yes, that's a challenge around midterms. But in the committee selection, I'm going to make sure that my committee knows what we're doing and why we're doing it. And at the end of the day, we're doing it so that the cohort has an amazing experience. So, the one who bears the why bears the how to do it all. And for me, about motivating people, it's if you know that you're doing this for the good of the classmates, for the good of MBA students, I think that's enough to motivate you to want to do it. I've also worked, we've done group work around midterms, but it is challenging. So again, just being kind, being supportive of other teammates. Not all of us will be doing midterms around the times we'll be wanting to execute this thing. So understanding that, okay, this committee will need an extra hand, and that's where I'll jump in, or I'll ask other people from within the committees to jump in. But it's just about supporting each other and being kind with each other, particularly around the times for midterms.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for your response, Jacqueline, did you get a hold of your mic? Is everything good there?
Jacqueline, you can actually type your answer in. And okay, yeah, so I'll read out what Jacqueline has written. So Jacqueline says that I think a major consideration for motivation will be communication and clear instructions, making sure I understand when things are stressful and not adding too much to people's plates.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So my next question is for all the finance candidates. In 1 minute, can you please answer if you were to face a tough decision, such as choosing to finance between 2 competing events, how will you decide? And we'll start off with Jenkins, according to alphabetical order.
Sure. Hi. So this question is pretty similar to the ideas that Anish was asking me before. So it's just in regards to communicating, or well, finding out more to do with what the different events offer and to what capacity they can cut back, if it's possible. I think that some of the other platforms raised a good point in terms of talking about trying to seek external revenues, trying to get more funding or partnerships. And I think the partnership idea is a good idea. I'm skeptical about the funding because other companies are going to be in a tough position as well. So I think the partnership idea would be a good way to help reduce costs for us and try to execute both events if possible. But if cuts are required, then we'll have to look at the benefits that these events bring to the student body.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to Sandeep.
Oh, sorry about that. If I were to choose between 2 events, first thing I think of is budget. This is something that I need to work with all the executives, whether it falls under the budget that we have for the year. Second would be, since it is made for student bodies, I would actually introduce a poll in which we can actually give students the option which of the 2 events they want to choose from, because at the end the value would be added to the student bodies. So these two things that I would like to go about.
Okay, thank you. Shannon?
Yeah, so those two just said the same things I was going to say. Big one being seeking additional funding from other partners, obviously putting it to the cohort for a vote or a poll, getting feedback. But of course, if it came down to it, I would have to do like a total like consequential analysis of the situation, like most benefit, like who's this going to hurt the most versus who's it helping the most, and just trying to make a good decision for everyone's best overall benefit.
Okay, thank you. Shivani?
I would say mostly everyone has covered every aspect of this. So basically, the first thing remains, if the budget is constant and it cannot be like changed during the year, so it comes down to what the student body is interested in, because they are the ones that go through the event and those face the event, and also what benefits the student experience and what enriches their experience. So based on that, last year also we conducted a Google form choice selection for the sports area. Like depending on how many students were interested in, we included that in our portfolio, so we can go about it the similar way.
Sounds good. And last but not least, Samira?
Thanks, Sylvia. Again, I agree with what my candidates before me had said. I think the one thing I would bring unique to this position would be that I would try to look for a specific partner for, say, the event that isn't going to be funded. So say if it was another case competition, we could look out to a consulting company or whatnot that would potentially want to partner with us to help reduce the cost and the burden on the MBAA. Or we'd have to evaluate based on how many people would be helping by having this event, and also just the variety of events that we're offering, making sure that it's not just one of the 10 bar nights, it's something different and valuable to the cohort.
Thank you. Okay, so my next question is for Sandeep and Shannon. So in your videos, you talked a lot about increasing transparency. And I was wondering if you could please elaborate on why you would prioritize monthly dashboards for transparency over other forms of finance responsibilities, such as looking at investment strategies with the money we already have and that we raised from the gala, and other things such as raising capital. Also, could you just elaborate if you foresee any challenges on the time spent on the dashboards, and as well as students complaining about potentially being bombarded by too many emails or information? It is a long question, so I can repeat it. And I think you're both S's, so I don't know if Sandeep or Shannon, you guys can.
I can jump on this first.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So the way I see it is like people don't know what they don't know. So like for me, for example, in my first year, I had no idea how much money was actually in the MBAA fund. And it wasn't until a few days ago that I realized like how much there is to spend on stuff. And I think like it should be common knowledge to all of us, like how much there is and how much it's going towards things. And I think there's no better way than to just like put it out there, just volunteer the information, just like, hey guys, just so you know, like last week we spent this much on this event. We're open to questions, we're open to feedback, because people don't really go out seeking information that they don't realize that they don't know, or they don't realize actually like directly affects them. So I would just think it might be beneficial to just volunteer it.
Okay, thank you. And just how much like time do you anticipate that will have to be spent on these dashboards?
Like preparing these reports, you mean monthly reports?
Yes.
I mean, I don't think too much. All the information's already there in the budget. So just, you know, putting it into a clear, concise way so that people can read it and understand it shouldn't take time at all.
Okay. Sandeep?
Hi. So how I would go about it, the transparency was actually the #1 agenda in my video. So I actually stood for the first year rep last year, and this was one thing that I discussed with all of the batchmates, and this is one thing that came across, not just from part-time, not just from full-time students, but also from part-time students. So, and even after when I'm standing, after all these months, I'm standing for VP Finance. It still remains. I'm not saying that the MBA Association lack transparency. We do have transparency, but it's not being communicated in the right way. It's not being put across that student don't even know whether there is any resource that they can go through. Of course, as Anish said, this is something that VP operations would do. But coming into finance, I also have certain ideas that I can put across through various VPs. I would actually pitch them, because all these ideas I got from the people who have voted me last year, and also the people who I have interacted with this year. And about the time that this is going to take, of course, it's going to take time on my part to prepare all these dashboards. But yeah, this is something that I need to deal with. This is something, a time management that a VP Finance is expected to have, and I'm pretty sure I'll be good there.
Okay, sounds good. And my last question is for Emily. Emily, you mentioned you'd like to increase part-time engagement, which is something that has been traditionally found to be difficult to improve. Can you please outline specifically how you plan to do this, and which item would be your first priority?
For sure. So yeah, I think like you recognize that part-time engagement's low. I know that there was numerous times where I'd come out to events and be the only part-time student. I think one of the first things I'd focus on is creating a WhatsApp group specifically for part-time students incoming that year. I know that there is the large WhatsApp group currently for like all the MBA students that were incoming in this cohort. However, talking with my part-time peers, a lot of us found it overwhelming and that we'd get lost in that WhatsApp group and that the content in there wasn't as applicable to us. So that's where I'd like to do a WhatsApp group specifically for part-time students as well. I'd also like there to be, like Nikhil touched on this, more variety with what day we schedule bar nights. I recognize that Thursdays work really well for full-time students. However, full-time students are on campus normally like 4 to 5 days a week, whereas part-time students might only be on campus 1 day a week. So I think we need to have some flexibility with when we plan events so that we can try and cater to more part-time students' needs. I'd also like to try and do like some new events. So I know that a lot of part-time students also have families and that it's hard juggling working, going to school, and juggling your family life at the same time. So I think it'd be cool if we could find a way to incorporate an event with your family, whether it be a picnic or a barbecue towards the start of the year.
Sounds good. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. So I can turn it back to you.
All right. Thank you, Sylvia. Just before we open the questions for the student body, I'd just like to request Jenna to speak about the selection process for the case comps and just speak to the view that the selection process can be intimidating. So, Jenna.
Hi, sorry, I'm used to using Zoom and not Google Hangout. So can everybody hear me okay? Just like I can see videos, so okay, cool. Nods, got nods. So the selection process for case competitions is meant to be holistically developmental for everybody. So the way that we do it is meant to provide an opportunity for everybody who wants to go through the selection process to be as in a real case competition situation as possible. It's meant to be a little intimidating because case competitions are intimidating. You are presenting and talking on your own for a certain amount of time. And really, the rubric is about your ability to speak and answer questions. It's not about how to tackle the specific problem in the case in the case that we provide. So we categorize the output of those rubrics in a way that provides the best feedback for students, which they're more than welcome to solicit. We also provide the feedback to coaches so that their coaches have that feedback and are able to provide some feedback to their students. We're trying to provide the most realistic situation. And we do 2 internals, which are quite, I mean, I'm sure Sylvia can attest to this, they're quite intensive to organize and do take a lot of resources in terms of our alumni contacts and getting them engaged. We have a specific set of alumni who we think are well suited to provide good feedback to students in that scenario, but we also don't want to over-engage them over the year. The reason that the process is the way it is because we used to allow students to provide their own teams, and then consistently the same teams kept being selected to go to case competitions. So I think our numbers were only around like 10 to 12 individual students who got to go to case competitions each year. And now we're closer to 35, 40. So we're trying to spread the love as much as possible and make the whole process as developmental as possible.
Thank you so much, Jenna. So I realize that we're running short on time, but we will extend this Q&A till 6:45 or even after that if needed. So now I'll open the question answer from the student body. So how this will work is you will type your questions and please mention who the candidate you want to ask the question is in your question. So we already have one question from Ravi. And this is for governance candidates. So I assume this means the president candidates. So we'll follow the alphabetical order again. So the question is, what specific one thing other than that is already in place would you do to help create a brand image of the MBA students separate from the BCom students in the local business community? So, Giorgio.
Okay, Ravi, good question, by the way. And I think so when you're talking about a brand image for MBA students, I can relate to probably you're talking about other business schools in Canada, like probably Rotman or Schulich, the brand that they have, right? So I think that is something that is built by, if you see their class size, they have a much bigger class size than us. So there are a lot more people who are getting placed at bigger companies compared to us. And that is something which is probably building the brand image So for us, the only way that I can think about is get more involvement with the alumni, because they can help more of us get jobs, more of us in different industries. Better companies will naturally mean that the brand image for the Alberta School of Business MBA is improving. So yeah, that's what I think about it. I hope I answer your question.
Just one clarification on that, like I want to add to my question. The question really targets to separate the brand image of MBA students from the BCom students. Currently, I'm not very sure how you perceive that, but what I have observed is that, for example, in the job market, I mean, every job that's available to an MBA is also available to a BCom, which means which means the business community do not draw any distinction between BCom and MBA students. So, but there certainly is. I think that's the reason why all of us are here. So that distinction is what I'm talking about.
But Ali, should I answer the question, or like does someone else? Should I open it to someone else?
Giorgio, for now you can go ahead with answering, but moving forward, let's stick to one question. We don't have time for follow-up questions right now, but we'll let
Okay. So again, Ravi, I mean, the number of BCom students compared to our MBA cohort is, I mean, it's more again. I mean, I'm sure that MBA students are very capable as well. The only way that I can think about is improving connection with alumni and people in the industry that can have more of us placed in better companies, and which can organically better our brand image as such. I mean, as an MBA association, I think that is what we can do.
Thanks.
Okay.
Next up, Kevin.
Hey there. Yeah, that's a great question, Ravi, and one that I totally understand, because one of the things that I guess I've noticed this year is, in a similar way, is how well organized the BSA, which is like the BCom Business Student Association, is organized, and the amount of corporate partnerships they have. And in some ways, I feel like that almost can make our MBA association look, like we need to step up our game a little bit. So that's why it's really one of my platform pieces that I want to engage more with the corporate partners. This is something that, like, as the president, you're going to sit on the councils with the Business Alumni Association and stuff as well. And I've talked to my friends that are already on who are out in the working world and are on the Business Alumni Association Council, and they've said that they would like to see more interaction with the MBA program. And so that's kind of a connection that I'd really try and foster and work more with our alumni to express, I guess, first of all, that there's a need for more opportunities that are explicit for MBAs as opposed to combined with the BCom opportunities. And then try and, I guess, once they understand that there's that need, they do all seem very eager to help. So to try and get their assistance to kind of see what they can do to get more sort of MBA higher level experiences for the student body. So hope that answers your question.
Sure, thanks.
Paramita, can you go on?
Hi, yes, I can. And this is actually one of the things that I had. Can you guys see me? Somehow my camera has frozen.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this is something actually which was a big part of when I was thinking about applying for the governance position. And thank you, Ravi, for the question. So I had talked with other alumni of the MBA previous alumni, and I asked them as to what are the things that we need to do, because I was actually thinking about the same thing, that the BCom and the MBA, and they said that one thing which I really wanted to put on board and talk to my group about was that to have structured bar night. So instead of having like a bar night where anybody can come, we also invite our alumni to come, and then there is an opportunity for the students to actually interact in a friendly setting, and then these alumni can actually act as their mentors or introduce them to other people. So in a friendly way, we can actually incorporate and get the connections going, which we were thinking about. I hope that answers the question.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you. And finally, Sharon.
Yes, thank you very much for the question, Ravi. I do understand sometimes BCom and MBA receive a little distinction, but I'm not sure if it's necessary to separate MBA students, BCom students, to be honest. MBAA and BSA can collaborate together as it has already happened a few times. The majority of MBA students obviously do have more professional experience and probably more to offer to BCom students as well. So I would like to do a little more of interactions through joint case comms or joint activities together so that BSA becomes more aware of MBA students and probably learn more about what we can do, what we can offer as a professionals. Through those activities, I do believe that we can also expand our corporate connections. Hopefully they can be a little more distinctions or differences between BCom and MBA students. I hope that answered your question.
Sure, thanks.
Now we will move on to the next question. It is by George Markey, and he gives a hypothetical. So it goes, I am interested in supply chain management. There used to be a supply chain and operation management club active till about a year ago, which used to organize events related to supply chain management. I'd like to know if I am interested in reviving the club or conduct events related to the field. How will you be able to help? I think I'd like to field this question to one of our current MBA executives. Anish, can you take this?
Yes, I can take that one. So George, initially we had a separate supply chain management club, but since this year we have moved on from specializations onto career tracks, and this has gone into the experiential learning portfolio along with the master's program office. So now we have different committee chairs for each of the career tracks, and they help organize events related to that career track. So if you are interested in coming on board for supply chain management, you should be getting in touch with the next VP Experiential Learning and be a member of the Experiential Learning Committee to do that kind of, be engaged in those kinds of events.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Thank you, Anish. So the next question we have is from Utkarsh. Okay, so he says that the cohort experience is about cohort. So how do you plan on enhancing the overall experience and increasing cross-dimensional learning between the batch? I mean, we bring in a diverse set of experience and skills with us as a cohort. How can we actually capitalize on that as if we can possibly achieve, then it would be great for all of us. Sorry for butchering that question, but yeah, this question will be fielded to all the president candidates. So we'll start again with Giorgio.
Thanks, Utkarsh, for such a long question, but I know what you're talking about, and I've heard of this from other MBA students as well. So first thing, when it comes to improving the cohort experience, what I feel we should have a drive which would have an Excel sheet with the names and details of every MBA students in the program currently, which means part-time, then full-time, first year, second year as well. And this would have their LinkedIn profile links, their email addresses, and the industries they are from, and the expertise. So this would be a good chance for people to directly connect with people that they want from specific industries. Another thing I mentioned about this earlier as well, that I want to get more involvement between people who don't get very much involved with MBAA association events. So something that I plan to introduce is something like a MBA leadership program, where there can be people from certain industries who are in our existing cohort, who can go and we can organize like an event in the MBA lounge where they can speak about specific industries, and we can send an invite to everyone in the cohort, and people who are interested in that industry can attend. So it helps both ways. It helps MBA students who want to improve their understanding and knowledge about certain industries, and can also help people who already have good knowledge to come up and speak and like help more people. So yeah, that is something that I want to focus on when it comes to overall experience as such? I hope I answer your question.
All right. Thank you, Giorgio. We'll move on to Kevin now.
Hey there. Yeah, thanks, Utkarsh, for that question. Heck of a question. So given it's like, I kind of have a three-part response for you on that. So first of all, like I'm understanding it as you want, like, you know, our student body has a lot to offer and learning more from each other. So honestly, like we have a very diverse cohort. I think we have a lot to all learn from each other. We all come from different backgrounds, different parts of the world. And a big part of it also is the part-time students. You know, they're all currently out in industry. They're actually quite a large part of our student body. And I think we need to involve them more. So that ties into kind of the part of my platform where I want to offer more events that can bring in the part-time students that fit with their schedule so that part-time and full-time students can learn from each other more. Also, we've talked about a lot of the events benefiting us as students, but I also think that we should be doing more work, and this can, you know, partner with the people in the Net Impact Club. But I've also thought of introducing a volunteer bank where we can get students together, going out in the community, doing volunteer work, and that would be another great way for students to get involved and learn from each other. And then finally, kind of as a third sort of way, is having more of the events where kind of students have to do teamwork and stuff to work together. And so that could be anything from, you know, kind of at the Amazing Race style event that was done at the start of the year in orientation, to how we've started introducing, say, like the sports teams like soccer and volleyball and badminton and stuff like that, where you force students to, you know, to be a team and to work together and learn from each other in that way. So that's kind of like my three-pronged strategy that I would use. So hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Kevin. Now we'll move on to Paramita.
Yes. Thanks, Utkarsh, for the question. So what I would be doing if I was the MBA president was basically I would try approach this question in two different ways. First and foremost, as I mentioned, that I would definitely have more structured bar nights in which I can invite the alumni to come together, and also people who would be, say, for instance, a group who are interested in tech. So that would be a structured bar night for the tech people. One day it could be AI, something in that area. And the other thing that I was thinking about is because of the part-time students, a large number of them are in working and they are working in different areas. A lot of them have families. They cannot come to different events. And so we miss out on the experience that they have. And so what I would definitely like to do is to have weekend events as well, and sometimes events which are not happening in the evenings. I, for myself, cannot attend because I live further away, and there's so many others from our cohort also. So we go to class, and that's almost when, or we interact with one another in small gatherings. So team building things happen during our own classes. But if you really wanted to have experience of the outside world, then it's the fun events where we can actually do that. So that is what I would try. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Paramita. Now, Sharon, can you weigh in on this?
Yes. How to enhance the overall experience of the batch? I think that is what MBA is really for, I believe. I would like to look into more options of hosting more events with alumni for sure, and other activities as well, such as alumni nights, case count with alumni rather than specifically only with consulting firms. I also would like to make sure that all MBA students, whether domestic or international, are well informed and interacted with each other as well. Volunteering work, as Kevin mentioned, I think that's a great idea as well. And I kind of had an idea of joining a marathon together as an MBA team with full-time and part-time together. Those variety of activities in clubs, those are, I'm pretty sure, viable options for MBA to implement to get the team together. I hope that answered.
Yeah, thanks a lot. All great ideas. Thanks a lot. And sorry, Ali, for giving you a difficult time with the question. Thanks.
Ali, you're on mute.
Okay. Thanks, Anish. So unfortunately, we've run out of time for today. Thank you for all the candidates for showing up and answering the questions in so much detail. And thank you for everybody who tuned in, the nominees, the student body, and the current executive members, and of course, Jenna as well. So yeah, that's about it from us. We'll be sending this recording out as well. And
all the best to all the candidates. We hope the best team wins.